Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wild Files, the podcast where we unpack the people side of MSP life. I'm your host, Jane Matthews, founder of Wildcat Careers, where we work exclusively with MSPs to fix broken hiring processes, build cultures people want to work in, and help create teams that succeed. Now, if you've listened to the last couple of episodes, we've been following a bit of a journey. We've talked about how businesses drift. Then we talked about how drift often starts when everyone is involved, but nobody really owns the process. And today we're talking about what happens next. Because something fascinating happens once recruitment goes quiet. You see, candidates don't actually mind waiting. What they mind is wondering. Let me explain. Imagine you've had a brilliant interview. You've clicked with the team. You've left feeling really positive. They tell you, we'll be in touch. Early next week. Great. Tuesday comes. Nothing. Wednesday. Still nothing. Friday arrives. Silence. Now, here's my question. What's actually happened? Well, the truthful answer is you probably don't know. Maybe the technical director has been pulled into a customer issue. Maybe the MD's been away. Maybe somebody's on holiday. Maybe they're waiting for one final conversation. Well, there are dozens of perfectly reasonable explanations. But that's not the story most people tell themselves. Because, well, human beings don't like missing information. Why don't we like that? Because we naturally fill in the blanks. And that's where recruitment quietly becomes psychology. One of the biggest mistakes I see MSPs make is assuming candidates understand what's happening behind the scenes. They don't. And why would they? They don't know your service desk has exploded because something has changed overnight. They don't know 3 engineers have called in sick. They don't know your biggest customers just had a huge outage. All they know is that someone promised to contact them, then didn't. That's all they experience. Silence. And silence is incredibly loud. Now, here's something worth remembering. People are brilliant storytellers. Give us enough information, well, we'll understand almost anything. You take that information away, we'll invent it. We've all done it. You send somebody a message, they don't reply. Within an hour, you're convinced yourself you've upset them. Then they ring later and say, sorry, God, I left my phone in the car. Nothing was wrong, but your brain couldn't cope with the uncertainty. Candidates are no different. Here's something I've learned after years of working exclusively with MSPs. Candidates cope remarkably well with delays because, well, life happens. Customers come first. Projects overrun. People get ill. Nobody expects a business to be perfect. What people struggle with is not knowing what's happening. There's a huge difference. One of the nicest compliments Wildcat receives isn't, thanks for finding me a new role. It's this, thanks for keeping me updated. You see, sometimes I'll ring a candidate simply to say, I haven't forgotten about you. I just don't have any news today. And you know what usually happens? They thank me. Not because I've solved the problem, because I've removed the uncertainty. And that's incredibly powerful. Here's something I'd love every MSP leader to remember. Bad news rarely damages trust. Silence does. Think about your own customers. If a project slips but your team communicates honestly, most customers are surprisingly understanding. Ignore them for 2 weeks. That's when frustration starts. And recruitment is exactly the same. People don't expect perfection. They do expect communication. One of the biggest myths in recruitment is that every update needs to contain progress. It doesn't. Sometimes the update is simply, we're discussing things, or the technical director is on site today, so we'll update you on Thursday. That's enough. You're replacing uncertainty with clarity. Clarity, well, that creates confidence. I often say candidates don't experience your intentions, they experience your operations. Communication is one of the quickest ways they decide what sort of business they're dealing with. If updates arrive when you said they would, well, they assume your business is organised. If people do what they promised, they assume your leadership is dependable. If communication disappears, well, they naturally wonder what else disappears inside the business. Recruitment isn't creating those impressions, it's revealing them. So, what should every MSP be communicating? Well, honestly, less than you think. An acknowledgement when somebody applies, clear expectations before every interview, a quick update if something changes, constructive feedback when a decision has been made. And if you're delayed, tell them. That's it. Not marketing, not polished corporate language, just communication. Simple, consistent, human. So let me leave you with one final thought. The strongest MSPs don't necessarily communicate more. They communicate when they said they would. That consistency creates trust, and trust creates confidence, and confidence keeps good people engaged. And good people remember how you made them feel long after they've forgotten the interview questions. So thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If today's episode made you think differently about communication, great. I'd love you to share it with another MSP owner or leader, because this conversation isn't really about recruitment. It's about trust. And trust is built one conversation at a time. Next week, we're going to explore another assumption I hear all the time inside growing MSPs. Until then, keep asking better questions, be intentional, and above all, guys, stay wild.